Excuse me, everyone. As we begin our service today, I'm going to kindly ask that we turn off or silence all cell phones and electronic devices. Thank you very much.
Thank you all for being here today. I thank you on behalf of our family and my sister Marla and me and the grandkids, and especially my mom and my dad that I think about. I am the actually backup rabbi. Rabbi Memis, who's the rabbi of the congregation, is in Israel. And so rather than having a stranger, I'm sure my mom would have preferred to have me here than having someone that didn't know her. And she would have said, "Oh my goodness, I thought you were going to be a doctor, but you're a rabbi, so you should do the service." So I share some words with you today. First, I begin from Ecclesiastes, which I think is appropriate. For everything there is a season, a time for every experience under heaven. There is a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to uproot what is planted, a time to tear down and a time to build up, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to grieve and a time to dance, a time to throw stones and a time to gather stones, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to seek and a time to let go, a time to keep and a time to discard, a time to tear and a time to sow, a time to keep silence and a time to speak. And I add today a time to remember a wonderful mother and wife, sister, aunt, grandmother, great-grandmother. Today we remember Florence. As you know, she didn't have a last name, and my dad gave her a last name. A middle name, I mean. Her middle name was Bagel. So even though it says Florence Backer Engel, it's really Florence Bagel Engel. And he used to call her Baggy. So for Baggy today. To those I love and those who love me who are here gathered today, when I am gone, release me, let me go. I have so many things to see and do. You mustn't tie yourself to me with tears. Be happy that we had so many years. I gave you my love, you can only guess how much you gave to me in happiness. I thank you for the love you each have shown, but now it's time that I travel on alone. So grieve a while for me if grieve you must, then let your grief be comforted by trust. It's only for a while that we must part, so bless the memories within your heart. I won't be far away, for life goes on, so if you need me, call, and I will come. And though you can't see or touch me, I'll be near. And if you listen with your heart, you'll hear all my love around you soft and clear. And then when you must come this way alone, I'll greet you with a smile, and I too will welcome you home. Adonai ro'i lo echsar. God is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. God leadeth me beside still waters. God restores my soul. God guides me in straight paths for the sake of the divine name. And though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I shall fear no evil. For I know, O God, that you are with me. Your rod and staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of all that lie before me. You have anointed my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of God forever. I know that at the end of my mom's life, she faded away, but she was still there in some sense. You always felt my mom's presence. You always heard her voice, even when she wasn't there. A very strong and determined person. What you saw was what you got. And so I share this for those of us here who loved her. When my memory of us has faded and I can no longer recognize, and you can see the love we share together is no longer in my eyes. When my stare is filled with emptiness and my speech is all but gone, it is time for you to say goodbye and for God to call me home. And when our friends have come together and have shown their last respects, there is still one thing I ask of you, and out of love I will expect. Do not mourn too long my passing, and find new joy in all you do. For we lived life fully, and surely we will join together in heart and mind as we always have done. Our tradition teaches us that birth and death are connected, that when we're born, God gives us a heart and a mind and a spirit, and it's up to us what we do with it. I can say that my mom nurtured in her early life, and my sister will be speaking about my mom. In her early life, she had a very difficult time and wasn't given the best opportunity to have a good heart and a good mind and a good spirit. But as she lived her life, she allowed it to grow. We are told that birth is a beginning and death a destination, but life is a journey, a going, a growing from stage to stage, from childhood to maturity and youth to age, from innocence to awareness and ignorance to knowing, from foolishness to discretion, and then perhaps to wisdom, from weakness to strength or strength to weakness and often back again, from health to sickness and back we pray to health again, from offense to forgiveness, from loneliness to love, from joy to gratitude, from pain to compassion, and grief to understanding, from fear to faith, from defeat to defeat to defeat, until looking backward or ahead, we see that victory lies not at some high place along the way, but in having made one's life, stage by stage, a sacred pilgrimage. Florence Engel, her birth was her beginning, and her death was her destination, but her life was a journey, a sacred pilgrimage made stage by stage, from birth to death, and now to life everlasting. People always ask me as a rabbi, they say, do you think it's strange that I can hear my husband in my mind, or hear my wife, or hear my mother, my father? And I say, no. Didn't you hear them in life when they weren't around and you still heard them in your head? Right? The voices that we live with continue to be in our head. And so when I think about my mom, I think about things that she said, and I'm going to mention a few. Not the things like clean up your room, or pick up your wet towels off the floor, or take out the garbage, or help your dad, not those kind of things, but the things that last for a lifetime. The memories of people that we love that are in our lives that continue to speak to us. What do they say to us? How do they respond to us? And so I'll just pick a few things which I think my mom would say, and things that will stay with me as I remember my mom and will stay with us. Life is an opportunity, benefit from it. Life is beauty, admire it. Life is bliss, taste it. Life is a dream, realize it. Life is a challenge, meet it. Life is a duty, complete it. Life is a game, play it. Life is a promise, fulfill it. Life is sorrow, overcome it. Life is a song, sing it. Life is a struggle, accept it. Life is a tragedy, confront it. Life is an adventure, dare it. Life is luck, make it. Life is too precious, favor it. Life is life, always appreciate it, always love it, and always live it. And something else. For me to have made one soul in my life, to created children and a family, to have added one flower to the garden of the earth, to have struck one blow for truth in the daily fight with lies, to have done one deed of right in the face of calamity, to have sown in the souls of human beings one thought that will not die, to have created a family and been a link in the chain of life. This shall be my immortality. And finally, I think my mom, this really expresses her. May God bless you with discomfort to easy answers, half-truths, superficial relationships, so that you will live deep within your heart. May God bless you with anger at injustice, oppression, and exploitation of people, so that you will help to make the world a little better. May God bless you with tears to shed for those who suffer from pain, rejection, so that you will reach out your hand and comfort those who experience this pain. And may God bless you with the foolishness to think that you can make a difference in the world, so that you will do the things which others tell you cannot be undone. In the rising of the sun and its going down, we will remember Flo. In the blowing of the wind and the chill of the winter, we will remember her. In the opening of buds and in the rebirth of spring, we will remember her. In the rustling of leaves and the beauty of autumn, we will remember Flo. In the beginning of the year and when it ends, we will remember her. When we are weary and in need of strength, we will remember her. When we are lost and sick at heart, we will remember her. When we have joys we yearn to share, we will remember Flo. But so as long as we live, she too shall live, for she is now a part of us, as today we pay honor and we remember her. I'd like to invite my sister Marla to share a few words.
Thank you for coming to celebrate our mother and grandmother, Florence. When I think of my mom, I think of her talking and laughing, a lot of laughing, with her friends. Mom had more close friends than almost anyone I know from all different parts of her life. There were friends from her young adulthood that we regularly visited on long weekends, on trips to Queens or Long Island, and there were so many of them. There was Roberta and Leo and Lenore and Sandy, Jerry and Sarah, Ellie and Artie. They were so close we called them aunt and uncle, and it took me a while to figure out that they weren't related. Steve and I crammed into their kids' bedrooms on the floor, and we all fell asleep to roaring laughter from our parents in the living room. There were her Willingboro friends. First, there were the neighbors in Buckingham. They tried to play bridge under a tree where 4 backyards met, with 10 or 12 kids running around and swarming, but mostly they ended up talking and laughing and chasing kids. They moved away to places across the country, but she kept in touch and she saw them every few years. Early on, there were the Hadassah friends, and then there were the Temple Emmanuel sisterhood friends. And you were truly a sisterhood. Bernice and Shirley, Charlotte, Naomi, San, Roz, and Adele, and Denise and Joanne, who moved away. You were a model for me of what female friendship could be. Loving, supportive, honest, loyal, fun, and always, always present when needed. Mom had 2 sisters that she loved very much, and she loved all of you just as much. We were all Temple families, and Temple Emmanuel was our second home and extended family. We spent a lot of time with the Alinsky and Sralovitz kids and other kids making the Willingboro building our playground, while our moms cooked or decorated for some event and talked and laughed together. And in a generational twist, I have Mom's friendships with Bernice and Roberta and Denise to thank for some of my very dearest friends. For years, Mom hosted a Yom Kippur breakfast. It grew from her friends and their kids to include our generation's spouses and then her friends' grandkids, until as she got older, the crowd got much, much bigger, and she regretfully called it quits. But as I look out among you, I see many alumni of those gatherings. And then there was her habit, incredibly embarrassing to her teenage daughter, of striking up a friendly conversation with just about anyone she met, in front of her in line and back of her in line, serving her in a store, and how people would tell her the most personal things. Sometimes we said Mom was friendly to a fault. Mom came from a very complicated family, and she grew up in an orphanage. I didn't know about the orphanage when I was very young, but I always knew there was something incredibly special and tight between Mom and her older sister Barbara. For more than 20 years, they had only each other, and although they were very different, they loved each other fiercely for 90 years. It was a private Jewish orphanage, and Mom talked fondly of her time there and her friends there. After 5 decades, she discovered an alumni club, and she vigorously renewed and nurtured those friendships too. And of course, nothing was more precious to Mom, or according to her, more perfect than her family. I know many of you endures Mom over-the-top bragging about us, and we appreciate you humoring her. I think because of her very messy family, and because Dad's family was no less complicated, their success in raising a family and then Steve's and mine with the next generation was nothing short of a miracle to my mom. Mom was adored by Dad for over 60 years, and she adored him right back. She missed him terribly these last 2 years. Dad didn't often remember birthdays or anniversaries or holidays, and Mom sometimes acted a little annoyed, but she often told me she really didn't care because he made her feel special and loved every single hour of every single day. When Steve got his driver's license and Dad told him to drive and me to sit up front so he and Mom could make out in the back seat. And they did, right? Do you need tissues? And they did, they really did. So their love was huge and romantic to the end. It provided a template for Steve and I, who've been married to our respective sweethearts for a total of 76 years, and for their 4 grandchildren, too. Mom bravely sailed with Dad, even though it was a white-knuckle experience for her nearly every time. For her beloved Jack, she endured whole days of sailing for decades, but she was grateful when Marvin started sailing with Dad and she could retire. She also blamed her, I think she could blame her friends Naomi and Jean for teaching Dad to sail. When they had 2 preschoolers, Mom and Dad took in her kid sister, as she called Bonnie. As a tough Brooklyn teen, Bonnie was a fish out of water in 1960s Willingboro, and she was not very happy. But she knew that Mom and Dad loved her, and they were always there for her. She adored them both and always lived only a few miles from them. Steve, Mom was so proud of you. My son, the rabbi at a big temple in Florida. I remember her driving you to and from every practice and dragging me to every single Little League game. And her cheering you on until she was hoarse, even though I think it took 1 or 2 seasons for her to understand what was going on. 2 of my friends of over 50 years recently told me, as far as I was concerned, you and Steve lived a charmed life. And you had such a nice, normal family. Your parents were always willing to drive us places. Your mom made parties for every single birthday and was always willing to have a crowd of kids at your house. You had a boat, and even on the boat, your mom made such a great lunch and was always such a great hostess. Mom was always willing to feed a crowd of kids on short notice, from grilled cheese and tomato soup for 10 after sledding to dinner for a dozen of my out-of-town friends before services on Friday night before my wedding with less than 2 hours' notice, and she didn't order out. When Dad and Steve were off camping with the Boy Scouts, Mom and I had girls' weekends. We shopped and lunched out, we watched silly TV, and we read in bed together. And Mom was a voracious reader. Up until about a month ago, I was hauling shopping bags of books to her from the library. I was started at the A's, and I would grab a bunch of books and put them in a bag. And she was asking for the latest New Yorker magazine and discussing the news in the Boston Globe, which she thought was much better than the Philadelphia Inquirer. David and Beverly, Mom was so glad Steve and I found you, our soulmates. Bev, she talked about what a good mom you were and how you were kind and compassionate and perfect for Steve. David, Mom just thought you were perfect. You're such a suck-up. No, honestly, love, thank you for being as kind and loving and generous to my parents, and especially to my mom for these past 2 years, as you were to your own parents. And of course, the family was completed by 4 grandchildren, Oren, Jory, Alana, and Zach. Grandma loved you all so, so much. She would stock up on presents for weeks before a visit. Alana, Jory, and Zach, she and Grandpa would drive 10 hours each way to see you in Ohio, and then almost always as often, she would hop on a plane to Mississippi and then Orlando. Grandma would talk for weeks about how excited she was to see you. And when she got home, she would call me to relive every single detail of the visit, 2 or 3 times. She was so proud that her son, the rabbi, produced 3 successful entrepreneurs, and she bragged about you all the time. Jory, she was so happy to see you this summer. For weeks she talked about how sweet you are. And she delighted in meeting her great-granddaughters, Margalit and Yael. She would spend hours staring at pictures and videos of them on her Frameo. Bravo, Zach. And Orrin, once you came along, Nana and Papa added frequent road trips to Boston. Even after you became the tallest member of the family, you were still her baby. And you loved spending school vacations with your Nana and Papa at the Spoiling House in New Jersey, where your Nana would spoil you with chicken soup and chocolate pudding just the way you like them and get down on the floor to play with you. These last 2 years, we were lucky to have her just a mile away. Nana loved seeing you at least once a week, and as you noted, it was a nice walk that mile over the river and through the woods to Grandmother's house. Mom always rose to the occasion when we needed her, staying in Cincinnati to care for newborn Zach when Bev and Alana were still in the hospital and Steve was still in rabbinic school. And coming to the rescue when to bring Orrin home after months in the NICU as a tiny preemie, we had to show the doctors we could feed him specified amounts on a very rigid schedule for a 24-hour period. David and I could not keep Orrin awake to get him to take those feedings. Mom hopped on a plane, slept in a chair at the hospital overnight, and completed all 6 feedings in the first 24 hours. And she promised the doctor she would stay with us until we got the hang of it. So she slept on our pull-out couch, and she stayed even longer. One of the ways I always picture Mom is well into her 60s on the playground with Orrin. She would climb up and go down the slide with him and crawl with him through those little tubes. Now that I'm in my 60s, and after doing that with Margalit and Yael a few months ago, just once, I don't know how she did it, and I'm even more impressed that she did and for how long she did it. Maybe it's because she was so petite. Part of our family lore is that once, when Steve was 4 or 5, I don't know if he's going to remember this, he looked Mom up and down and said, "You're such a little mommy." Mom was a slight woman, small in stature, but she had a really big heart, and we all love her and will miss her so much. Thank you for coming to mourn and honor our mother and grandmother with us. She loved you all.
The Jewish traditional text, the Talmud, asks a question. It says, if one of the commandments is to honor your mother when she's alive, does that commandment end when she dies? And the answer the rabbis give is no. They say, how can you honor someone who is no longer living? And the answer is simple. The way that you can best honor your mother and father is to be the person that you wish they wish that you would always become. The best, the kindest, the most compassionate, generous person that you could be and make a difference in the world. And so as I remember my mom, I will always try to honor her by what I do and what I say, by the way that I create a loving relationship with my wife, Beverly, by the way I try to be the best parent to my kids, as she was, and also to be a great grandfather, not a great, but a grandfather, a wonderful grandfather to my grandkids. And God willing, one day I may even have, like she had, great grandkids to love and to honor and to nourish. And I think that the same is for all of us. The way that we can best honor Flo, whether our relationship was direct with her or through me and Marla or through our kids, is to do something nice, to be the best person that we can be, is the best way that we can honor Florence Engel. I'd like to now offer a prayer that's part of our Jewish tradition. It's a prayer that asks that the soul of the person continue to be with us. It is only the body of Mom that we lay to rest today. Her soul has gone back to God who gave it, and little bits of her soul are implanted with everyone who ever spent a moment of their life with her. A little bit of Florence Engel's humor, her personality, her compassion, it's all planted within each and every one of us. And that's what this prayer really reminds us. It reminds us that although she's not here physically, she'll continue to be here spiritually. Jewish tradition teaches that faults are forgiven and virtues grow larger when someone dies. I hope for my mom that her shortcomings that we all have will be forgiven, and that the virtues that she shared with all of us will continue to be enlivened and continue to be remembered for good. I'll ask you now to all please stand as you're able as I read the El Malay in the Hebrew and then in the English. El Malay Rachamim Shochem Bamrumim Hamsei Menuchan Nuchanat Tachat Chanfei Hashkina Im Kiddoshim Utorim Kizahia Harakia Masirim Et Nishmat Fegel Bat Hana Shaholach Laolamo Baal HaRachamim Yestereher Beseter Chanafav Lolamim Bitzor Chayim Et Nishmata Adonai Hu Nachlata V'tanuach B'Shalom Amishkovar V'nomar Amen. Compassionate God, eternal Spirit of the universe, grant perfect rest in your sheltering presence to Florence Engel, who has entered eternity. God of mercy, let her find refuge in your eternal presence and in the shadow of your wings, and let her soul be bound up in the bond of everlasting life. God is her inheritance. May she rest in peace, and let us say, Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher yatzar echem b'tzalmo. We praise you, Adonai, our God, ruler of the universe, who forms us in your image, who nourishes us and sustains us in your will, and who causes all of us to die, but who also implants within us immortal life through the tenderness and the wonderful aspect of a love that never dies and memories that never fade. In a moment, I'm going to ask you, because I can tell you as a kid how many times I remember going to synagogue with my mom and dad and standing just how you're standing and them saying Kaddish for other people. And so we have the honor today to say Kaddish for her. You'll find the Kaddish in the middle of the small prayer book that you have. The Hebrew is on page, the Aramaic is on page 20, and the transliteration on page 21. But I read this, and then we'll join together, and we will conclude with Kaddish. When I die, if you need to weep, cry for someone walking the street beside you. And when you need me, put your arms around others and give them what you need to give to me. You can love me most by letting hands touch hands, souls touch souls, and hearts touch hearts. You can love me most by sharing your joys and multiplying your good deeds. You can love me most by letting me live in your eyes and not only in your mind. And when you say Kaddish for me, remember what our tradition teaches: love doesn't die, only the body does. So when all that's left of me is love, give me away in love, give me away in love. We join together. Yitgadal v'yitgadash shemei rabbah, b'yalma divrach yutev yamlich malchuteh, b'chayechon uv'yomechon uv'chayei d'chol beit Yisrael, b'agalav zman kariv imru, amen. Yehei shmei rabbah mevarach leolam almei maya, Yitbaraf, Yishtabach, Yitbaar, Yitraman, Yitnaseh, Yitadar, Yitalel, Yitalal, Shmei Dugadsha, Burichu, Leilam min kol birchata v'shirata, Tushvachata v'nechemata, Dariram, Miyama, Vimru, Amen. Yehei Shlama, Rabba min Shemaya, V'chayim, Aleinu v'yal kol Yisrael, Vimru, Amen. Oseh Shalom birumav, Uyaseh Shalom, Aleinu v'yal kol Yisrael, v'imru, amen. May God grant peace to those of us who mourn and comfort to those who are bereaved amongst us. Lech yishalach Adonai, go your way, for God has called you. Go your way, and may God be with you. Falach lefanecha tzidchecha kavod Adonai yasvecha. May her righteousness go before you, and the glory of God receive you. May God console all of us, with all who mourn in Zion and Jerusalem. Hamakon yenechem etchem batog sha'ah ve'elei Tzion Yerushalayim. May each of us go forth in peace, slowly and surely, refuah shlema, a full sense of healing, fully back into life. And may Florence Engel rest in peace, knowing that she is being loved and remembered. Amen. We'll ask the pallbearers to come forward. Bev? Bev? Marley, not you. Bev? You go with the kids. You and David, and then the kids.